We know there will be mistakes, but what we're looking for are the signs and the indications that he is learning, that he's building his experience and building his capability as a Formula One driver too. And there were lots of those in Zandvoort.
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia, and this week I'm joined by team representative Bradley Lord answering all your questions about the Dutch Grand Prix. Bradley, welcome back to the Akkodis Debrief. It's been an eventful weekend in Zandvoort, to say the least. But before we dive into all the details, how was it being back trackside after Summer Shutdown?
It was great. It was lovely to have the break, and I think everyone in the paddock appreciated it, and everyone in the factories as well, who are working so hard for 2026. But likewise, after a few weeks, it's time to get back to it. We all love racing, and you could feel a real spring in everyone's step in Zandvoort once you sort of went through the paddock swipes and got down to work.
And we dove straight into it with Zandvoort. I mean, loads went on, and let's dive into the race then. So for George, first of all, I was actually in the race support room at the factory, sitting next to the aerodynamicist when he had that collision with Charles Leclerc, and you could just see the floor lighting up red with damage. So just how much damage was sustained on George's floor, and did that affect his race pace?
It was pretty substantial damage. You could see it on TV and on the replays, bits of the floor falling off, the sort of floor edge, which is super important, not just for the downforce, actually for the handling characteristic as well. So George lost enough performance to cost him anywhere up to 3/4 of a second a lap. So it was substantial, but also it changed the handling characteristics of the car as well. So he was having to cope with the loss of performance and being effectively down on lap time, but then also adjusting and adapting to a car that was starting to behave in a pretty unpleasant way at points. So yeah, fighting with one hand tied behind his back, and in the end did a brilliant job to get it to P4 and score the points that we did.
And I mean, off the back of that then, so was that the main reason that we asked George to let Kimi pass him?
Yeah, it was exactly that. George, we knew he was down on performance. We knew Kimi had a healthy car. He had actually run over some debris as well from that same collision, but he had the pace, and we therefore asked the drivers to invert, which is a normal team instruction that we will deploy from time to time if we think it can help the team overall score more points. And Kimi was then able to stretch his legs, start closing down Leclerc in front and start pressuring the Ferrari, which brought some other strategic options into play.
And off the back of that, actually, why did we decide to pick Kimi on the softs?
As we went into the race, we thought it was probably a one-stop. We weren't completely wedded to that plan though, because we knew it was going to be quite on the limit in terms of tyre life, and that a two-stop could come into play if the degradation proved to be higher than we'd expected before the event. So as we went into the race and as we were watching Kimi's lap times come down and watching how Leclerc's were evolving as well, we could see actually that degradation was high, and that the two-stop was becoming increasingly attractive, because although you obviously lose time, you'd lose track position, and that is a significant factor at a circuit where it's so hard to overtake like Zandvoort. Nonetheless, we believed that the tyre offset and the performance advantage would give Kimi the opportunity to get back through those cars and potentially leapfrog Leclerc as well. So that's why we pulled the trigger, tried the undercut, and obviously came within a few tenths of a second of it being successful.
With circuits like Zandvoort, where it is narrow, it's super difficult to overtake. At that point in the race, you're really relying heavily on strategy. Is that the only way to progress?
It's either doing something different, like trying the two-stop when everyone looks to be hanging it out for one, or building a tyre offset around your single stop so that you've got more tyre performance to use. So Kimi had been looking after those tyres in the first stint, for example, and looking to go longer than the cars around him. We boxed actually quite early, but then the only other thing really open to us, given how hard overtaking is, given that it's really not straightforward to pass, even though he had managed it on Albon obviously earlier in the race, was to roll the dice, try something different on the strategy. And as I say, Leclerc was just able to be that bit quicker on his in lap than Kimi was able to produce on the out lap, and it meant that he emerged just in front, and then obviously they had their collision shortly afterwards.
Was there any other variables maybe that came into play? We know that weather was a topic of discussion throughout the race weekend, but the rain did seem quite light overall in the race.
The weather didn't turn out to be as heavy or as severe maybe as we'd expected. So 15-20 minutes before the race, we could see a front coming, we could see a shower working its way north across Zandvoort town and then towards the circuit. That actually broke up a little bit. So where we'd been expecting light rain, we weren't sure if we'd need to move to intermediates or not. Actually, it turned out to be little more than a few spots. So the circuit was a bit greasy, but it certainly wasn't anything other than slick tyre conditions. That turned out to be rather easier to manage than it could have been had it come in heavier.
And on to Kimi as well. What positive aspects are we taking from his performance this weekend, especially with the overtaking and his race pace?
Yeah, I think as people have done their mid-season evaluations, Kimi's had a little bit of criticism and perhaps some suggestions that things aren't working out, and we've been really clear all along that this is a learning year for him. It's come very very early. He's still very young and very early in his career trajectory as well. So we know there will be mistakes, but what we're looking for are the signs and the indications that he is learning, that he's building his experience and building his capability as a Formula One driver too. And there were lots of those in Zandvoort. So if you look at his race pace, you look at the improvement and the step he made in qualifying, notwithstanding a pretty troubled practice session. There are lots of really good ingredients there. It didn't all quite come together in Zandvoort, with the penalties obviously for collision and pit lane speeding at the end of the race, and then obviously some incidents in practice. But when we look at the pure underlying performance, we can see good progress, and we can see that he's got much more confidence in the car now that we've reverted on the rear suspension configuration. So we're hopeful of seeing that confidence continue to build and Kimi's performance continue to do the same over the races ahead.
Now, before we move on, I just want to cover also his return of F1 Academy in Zandvoort. How did Dorian get on?
Yeah, it was a slightly mixed weekend, but overall she emerged from the weekend with exactly the same championship lead as she had going in, so still a healthy 20-point advantage, a podium finish in the second race as well. So it was a challenging weekend, a tough weekend. Zandvoort's a demanding circuit, and yeah, a tough one for all the drivers, but she did a really solid weekend, solid performance, and there's obviously 2 race weekends left, with Singapore coming up and then Las Vegas, and she's in prime position to defend that lead, hopefully stretch it, and still very much gunning for that championship.
With Zandvoort comfortably behind us then, it's Monza next, home race for Kimi. Any predictions as to how you think the W16 is going to fare?
All of us, apart from McLaren, are in that, in a big fight for P3 and best of the rest behind them. So they're clearly a step ahead of the field now, at pretty much every type of circuit, to be honest. So they're a dominant force. And then after that, there's an incredibly close fight between ourselves, Ferrari, Red Bull, and then a number of other teams from weekend to weekend. We've seen the midfield has really closed up, and the gaps, especially in qualifying, are incredibly tight. So the key thing for us, if we're aiming to be at that best of the rest position and fighting for the 3rd spot on the podium, or to be in position to pick up the pieces if anything goes wrong in front, the key thing is really extracting everything from the car. We don't really feel that we maximise that in Zandvoort, and then making sure that operationally we're covering every detail and we're on point with things like pit stops, run plans through the sessions, in laps, out laps, starts, and all the other bits that go into making up a successful race weekend. So that's our focus, and if we put all of that together, we're confident we can be in that fight for P3 and potentially more if others in front slip up.